Welcome back to the Mission Directors Center here at Vandenberg Space Force Base. This is launch coverage of Sentinel-6B. We are T-minus 25 minutes and counting until liftoff, and you're looking inside the Mission Directors Center, where both Nikki and I were in the upper left-hand corner, along with your mission directors who are filling the room that you see there. The international collaboration for this mission is an incredible one. We have NASA, ESA, we have NOAA, we have EUMETSAT, and CNES out of France. You're looking now at the European Space Operations Center in Darmstadt, Germany. They will be taking over control of the Sentinel-6B satellite, bringing it online, searching for the acquisition of signal, and then making sure that they raise it to the proper orbit. In the meantime, they are watching along with the engineering team that is here. You have the operations team, which is right there in that room that you see there. And then we have the operations team, the engineering team, if you will, that is here in Vandenberg, that has been closely monitoring the Sentinel-6 satellite as it prepares for launch. We see Janet Petro in the second row. To the far right, our center director for the NASA Kennedy Space Center. Our friends from ESA also here. The ESOC will hand off the Sentinel-6B to EUMETSAT once they have it fully operational. And of course, EUMETSAT will get that data out to the rest of the world, that critical data that this spacecraft is become famous for. Incredible accuracy with determining the height of our oceans.
Yes, and that really helps inform our daily forecast that we get. If you're like me and you check the weather every single morning when you're trying to decide what you're going to wear, you check that weather, right? And so a lot of people rely on this data.
It can also be critical for severe weather, as it plays a critical role in the formation of hurricanes, being able to track and predict with greater accuracy the impact that these hurricanes can have on land. Spacecraft engineering team has a number of cameras that they're looking at for today, many of them based at the bottom underneath the launch pad, and that's where they can see their equipment that shows how they get switched on internal power when they go to the battery power on board the spacecraft. It's a big moment to come off of shore power, which is the power on land, to then switch to internal. The spacecraft team likes to have those batteries charged up as much as possible so that when they go into orbit, should they not get the signal right away, they can keep operating until they do get the signal. But they do very much, get those batteries charged as much as possible before they switch over to internal power.
Yes, and like you were saying, that switchover is just basically the spacecraft no longer relying on the ground systems for that power. As you just mentioned, the spacecraft is able to rely on its own internal power at this point.
All right, we passed into loading of helium on board the Falcon 9 rocket. The helium, of course, used to pressurize the propellant tanks to be able to push that propellant through the engines so that it can burn. Coming up at T-minus 20 minutes and 30 seconds, we'll start chilling the strong back so that we can load those propellants into the second stage.
Yes, and we're going to see the effect of that on the second stage when those tanks start venting
Stage 2 RP1
LOX.
load is complete.
It's much warmer here in Vandenberg than it's going to be inside of those tanks. So as a result, we're going to see that gas boiling off and venting out of the system in order to maintain the tank's pressures.
And there you see it venting out. The beginning of the chilling process of the Strongback to load that super chilled liquid oxygen into the second stage. You're watching live coverage of Sentinel-6B. This is the Mission Director Center at the Vandenberg Space Force Base. As part of a global effort, Sentinel-6B will keep the long-running measure of sea level on track. Let's take a closer look now at its real-world impacts.
Sentinel-6B is this really exciting high-tech satellite mission where we're measuring the height of the ocean from space. If we think about shipping, national security, fisheries, all of these depend on this information.
The ocean is very dynamic, it changes all the time. Having a measurement really is important towards understanding what's happening with the ocean, both in real time, but also in terms of forecasting.
We're in the business of trying to avoid emergencies, not just respond to them after the fact.
Sentinel-6 is a unique project, so it consists of 2 satellites built as twins, and the first one was launched, Sentinel-6 Mike Freilich, in 2020. The second one was built in parallel. We literally have hundreds, if not thousands of people working to build these programs together.
So Sentinel-6 Michael Freilich has been looking at the Earth, sea level around the globe, and now Sentinel-6B is going to take over. We've been tracking changes to sea level using satellites since 1992, so it's been more than 30 years now.
The way the Sentinel-6B measures is it sends a radar signal down to the surface of the ocean and measures how long it takes that signal to get back to the satellite. And from that, we can really get a very accurate measurement of how sea levels are changing locally and on a global scale, down to about a 1-inch accuracy.
Very dangerous Hurricane Milton rapidly approaching the west coast of the Florida Peninsula with multiple life-threatening hazards.
In 2024, Hurricane Milton intensified very rapidly, and Sentinel-6 Michael Freilich data were able to help us forecast this intensification.
Better predictions allow people to get out of the way before the storm hits. It allows them to take measures to protect their homes and their businesses. It allows emergency crews time to set up. All of these things are going to save lives.
That's the goal, is really to have data that's available within hours of the observations.
Sea level measurements are really critical to a number of different industries. So if you think about the packages that show up at your home, the expectation is that they arrive on time and arrive quickly. And Sentinel-6B can provide us the information we need to understand how to move things as quickly as possible from one part of the Earth to the other. So from a national security perspective, the U.S. military has installations all across the globe in coastal areas. Understanding the change in water level is really critical to preparedness.
With fishing, that data is used to understand where the fish are, how healthy they are, how they can be sustained, and how they can be managed better.
Sentinel-6B carries on this legacy of measuring sea level in a very consistent and very accurate manner.
Sentinel-6B will really propel us into the next decade and continue that sustained, highly accurate observation.
And understanding how water is moving in the open ocean, how it's moving close to the coast, that's really important information for us to protect our way of life.
And Sentinel-6B will get there by riding on this Falcon 9 rocket, which just passed through another milestone, and that is the beginning of Stage 2 LOX load. Again, Stage 2 LOX load beginning at T-minus 16 minutes and 45 seconds. We hit that just almost a minute ago. We are complete with loading propellant in the RP1 in the second stage, and we continue to load LOX in the first stage and propellant in the first stage as well. We're rapidly moving down to our terminal count, which kicks off at T-minus 10 minutes. This is the Mission Director Center at Vandenberg Space Force Base for coverage of Sentinel-6B. A little bit about the spacecraft flying today. Sentinel-6B is about the length of a pickup truck. It flies 830 miles above the Earth, about 1,200 kilometers, circling the planet about 13 times a day at over 16,000 miles an hour. In about 10 days, it covers nearly 90% of our oceans. And it does so with that 66-degree tilt, that inclination that allows it to make those sweeping observations. Power for Sentinel-6 comes from 4 solar panels that feed a 200 amp hour battery built from more than 1,100 lithium-ion cells. So if you think about that angle of inclination, that's 66 degrees, if you imagine the globe, you were to put a rubber band around the equator, and then you were to tilt it 66 degrees and then spin that globe, that's the coverage that this satellite and the 3 other ocean observing satellites cover. That's how they get that 90% of the ocean. The only thing that's left out are the polar caps, where of course we don't have a whole lot of ocean up there, so it's not as much of a problem. We're continuing to mark the milestones as we count down to our T0 of 9:21 and 42 seconds. Now sitting at T-minus 12 minutes. We started loading locks on the second stage. And a little bit deeper into the count, we've got some other major milestones.
Yeah, coming up at about T-minus 7 minutes, we will be in the terminal count and hear that engine chill has begun on the first stage.
You said 6-7, and I started waving my hands, just for the record. The payload, of course, is Sentinel-6B, and it's joining that global network known as the Copernicus program that's been tracking ocean and atmospheric weather since 2014. And it builds on the long-term global sea level data that began in 1992 by the French-U.S. Topex Poseidon satellite. And that was then followed by the Jason series of satellite missions.
The data that we receive from these satellites helps to develop the models that drive every modern weather and forecast. Agencies such as NOAA use this data to refine storm and climate pattern predictions.
And we just got a call out that the spacecraft is on internal power. It's a little early, but obviously that's something that they calculated. Eventually we go to internal power for both the spacecraft and the rocket.
Continuing on with information about Sentinel-6B, the data from the spacecraft and all of the satellites prior to this one guide SpaceX meteorologists in deciding when to launch, where to land, and how to plan logistics around shifting conditions worldwide. Space systems like the Copernicus program that you just mentioned help connect life on Earth, making life more resilient and safer for us, especially around natural disaster events.
We're inside of T-minus 10 minutes and counting. A quick recap if you're just joining us. We had an improvement in the weather forecast for today's launch, going to 90% go for weather after looking at a number of low pressure systems that had been bringing a lot of rain to the area. In fact, some record amounts of rain. But that cleared out in time for our launch weather officer to give us the green light for both weather and the range. Teams came on console a number of hours, several hours before today's T0. We got our COLA report and then the NLM poll at T-minus 43 minutes, and that kicked off our tanking at T-minus 35 minutes. And we've been loading propellant since. We're starting to get down into the final milestones before liftoff. We just heard from the spacecraft team that we are on internal power for Sentinel-6B, located inside those fairing halves that you see there at the top of the rocket. And as we approach these final minutes, we have a number of milestones that are coming up.
That first milestone that's coming up is T-minus 7 minutes. When we reach that point, we are then in the terminal count and Falcon 9 will begin engine chill. Prior to any propellant flowing, the plumbing on the engines are chilled down, and this just prevents any thermal shock of the system when the cryopropellant liquid starts flowing at a higher flow rate. If you think about it like a glass cup, and you pour very cold liquid in that. If that glass cup is at room temperature and you just shock that cup with the cold liquid, it could crack. The same thing is being done here.
That thermal conditioning is important, as you mentioned, for all aspects, especially the engines when they're getting ready to fire up, but we also pre-chill the lines. SpaceX has also upgraded their ability to recycle a count out here by improving their LOX farm. They can now do 3 consecutive launch attempts in a row if needed. Hopefully we won't need it and we'll get it off today.
Engine chill.
There's the stage 1 engine chill that you mentioned. Now in about a minute, RP1 loading for the first stage will wrap up, completing the fuel side of the propellant equation for the booster. SpaceX uses RP1, which is rocket-grade kerosene. And then for liquid oxygen, that's the oxidizer. Those are the primary propellants.
That LOX propellant is chilled to just under negative 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Because the propellant has to be so cold, it is loaded later in the count. This is intentional in order to load denser propellant. The denser the propellant, the more propellant you can fit in the tanks. The more propellant you have, the more propellant that you fly. That means the more performance you get. If for any reason we are unable to launch today, which we are not expecting that, those propellants would need to be chilled back down again before our next launch attempt.
After 3 launch attempts, SpaceX would then go to 1 day off and then another attempt after that day, and they would alternate if it came to that. But we are green across the board today, so we're not expecting to have to explore any of those options. T-minus 5 minutes, 27 seconds and counting. Up next, looking to start pressurizing the tanks for strong back retract.
Falcon 9 tanks are pressurizing for strong back retract.
That strong back, which is giving the rocket its support right now, also known as the transporter erector, it's going to start retracting from the rocket here at T-minus 4 minutes and 30 seconds, so in just a few seconds. That truss structure is hinged at the base. It has clamp arms around the second stage that open
Strong back
slowly.
retract has started.
And there go the clamp arms, opening up, releasing the rocket. And now we have the final NLM pull.
Net. LD? Yes, LD. NASA is go for the Sentinel-6B launch.
Copy all. Good news.
There you have it. NASA launch manager Tim Dunn giving the final go as we count down to the final minutes before the liftoff of the Sentinel-6B satellite riding a Falcon 9 rocket. You see the strong back fully angling back. It's a good visual indication that we are right on time.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
And as we just heard, stage 1 LOX load has completed, and this completes all prop loading on that booster. Both fuel and LOX tanks are pressurized using helium. So in flight, that helium just helps push propellants down inside of the tanks and into the engines.
T-minus 2 minutes and 30 seconds and counting. T-minus 60 seconds, Falcon 9 will enter startup. At that point, the rocket's onboard flight computers take over. From there on out, the countdown is fully autonomous. Just inside of T-minus 2 seconds, the 9 Merlin 1D engines will ignite. And once they're at full power, Falcon 9 will lift off the pad and begin its climb to orbit. After engine start, Falcon's vehicles are held down until all systems are go.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
And there we have it. Stage 2 LOX load has completed. And that concludes stage 2 prop loading entirely. And as we can see now on the live video feed of the Falcon 9 rocket standing proud and tall, you can see white gas venting from the rocket. That gas is not smoke, Daryl. It is actually oxygen venting from the tank, maintaining those tanks' pressures. We just heard the call out for gas closeout. It's beginning. This just means that the tanks will be topped off and the vents will be sealed to maintain tank pressure. Let's listen in for that confirmation that Falcon 9 startup has begun at T-minus 1 minute.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
At this point, the autonomous flight computers have taken over the launch countdown, and stages 1 and 2 are pressurizing for launch.
LD is go for launch.
We just heard the SpaceX launch director give the final go.
All systems are go.
T-minus 3 seconds.
The range is green. Weather is green. The final seconds of countdown.
T-minus 15 seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. And liftoff of Falcon 9. Go SpaceX, go Sentinel-6B.
Sentinel-6B rising, extending nearly 4 decades of the precise sea level record from space.
Falcon 9 booster is currently firing all 9 of those Merlin engines at 190,000 pounds of thrust per engine, and we can hear it, and soon we're going to feel that in our chests. So exciting. After about 50 seconds, those engines will begin throttling down to slow down the vehicle to prepare for max Q. Think of it as kind of like a low-key fire. Max Q, or maximum aerodynamic pressure, is when Falcon 9 will feel the largest structural load of the vehicle that it's going to see during its entire boost phase of flight. Slowing down the vehicle just means that Falcon 9 is going to experience a less load.
Now traveling faster than the speed of sound, preparing for max Q. Now we have a few events coming up in quick succession, starting with main engine cutoff, or MECO. That's when SpaceX will shut down all of its 9 engines on the first stage.
Shortly after MECO, stage 2 will separate from the inner stage in the booster, and then the second stage is going to continue on, igniting the Merlin vacuum engine. We're going to hear the call out for that second engine start 1, or SES1. That burn should last just under 6 minutes.
A lot of clouds in the area, so our ground shots not able to pick up that traditional flight into the night sky, but we are looking right down the barrel of the first stage with the onboard camera. Again, the clouds not enough to stop launch, but certainly from a low pressure system in the area.
Main engine cutoff.
Standing by for main engine cutoff.
Stage separation confirmed. MVAC ignition. Stage 1 boost back startup.
That was a beautiful light up of the second stage, and you're looking now getting ready for the fairings to come off. That's our next big milestone. Confirmed. And there go the fairings. You see now Sentinel-6 exposed to the elements of space. Now soaring towards orbit, another step complete in our ongoing effort to understand Earth's heartbeat through its oceans.
Back shutdown.
We're 50 seconds into the second stage first burn. Welcome back to the Mission Directors Center here at Vandenberg Space Force Base. This is launch coverage of Sentinel-6B. We are T-minus 25 minutes and counting until liftoff, and you're looking inside the Mission Directors Center, where both Nikki and I were in the upper left-hand corner, along with your mission directors who are filling the room that you see there. The international collaboration for this mission is an incredible one. We have NASA, ESA, we have NOAA, we have EUMETSAT, and CNES out of France. You're looking now at the European Space Operations Center in Darmstadt, Germany. They will be taking over control of the Sentinel-6B satellite, bringing it online, searching for the acquisition of signal, and then making sure that they raise it to the proper orbit. In the meantime, they are watching along with the engineering team that is here. You have the operations team, which is right there in that room that you see there. And then we have the operations team, the engineering team, if you will, that is here in Vandenberg, that has been closely monitoring the Sentinel-6 satellite as it prepares for launch. We see Janet Petro in the second row. To the far right, our center director for the NASA Kennedy Space Center. Our friends from ESA also here. The ESOC will hand off the Sentinel-6B to EUMETSAT once they have it fully operational. And of course, EUMETSAT will get that data out to the rest of the world, that critical data that this spacecraft is become famous for. Incredible accuracy with determining the height of our oceans.
Yes, and that really helps inform our daily forecast that we get. If you're like me and you check the weather every single morning when you're trying to decide what you're going to wear, you check that weather, right? And so a lot of people rely on this data.
It can also be critical for severe weather, as it plays a critical role in the formation of hurricanes, being able to track and predict with greater accuracy the impact that these hurricanes can have on land. Spacecraft engineering team has a number of cameras that they're looking at for today, many of them based at the bottom underneath the launch pad, and that's where they can see their equipment that shows how they get switched on internal power when they go to the battery power on board the spacecraft. It's a big moment to come off of shore power, which is the power on land, to then switch to internal. The spacecraft team likes to have those batteries charged up as much as possible